If you look at all the gold that's ever been mined, so 190,000 tonne or whatever, it's around that $7-8 trillion. But if you look at what's actually, I guess, available to trade in an investable form, they estimate about $1.5 trillion.
The Trader Cobb Crypto Show, talking business in blockchain.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Trader Cobb Crypto Show. I've got a guest today. We're going to talk about gold, silver, bullion, as well as OTC on Bitcoin and various other bits and pieces. It's Paul Engeman, who is the director of Ainslie Gold and Reserve Vault. Appreciate your time today, mate. Thanks for being with us.
G'day, mate. Very good to be here.
Look, I'm pretty interested in this because, well, obviously I've traded commodities for a lot of my trading career. They're one of my favorite things to trade because they do have a lot of high volatility around certain events and can be somewhat predictable in their trends. So you wanted to just tell us, first of all, a little bit about your background, and have you been in gold and bullion and precious metals your whole career, or has it been just recently?
Yeah, mate. So I'm a civil engineer by training, but 20 years of my career has been in property development, in publicly listed companies and the like. I started getting into precious metals just before the GFC, so somewhat luckily identified that was probably going to end badly before it did, and put everything into gold and silver, which worked out quite nicely. And then in 2013, I made the move from property into Ainslie Bullion. So I've been here for a bit over 6 years, 6.5 years, and enjoying the change.
So, I mean, that's a pretty big call, mate. I mean, I traded through that period when I was in London, and for a trader, it was just, it was wonderful. It was really good. If you're trading derivatives, it was fantastic, which I was. So, I mean, what sort of things was it that made you really get that bullish gold and silver? Of course, it went on one of its biggest runs ever throughout that period. What was it that you were looking out for? And again, are you seeing anything now?
Yeah, look, pretty similar. Like I think in that lead up, so gold and silver started that bull run in sort of 2004. And I guess the reasons behind that were exactly the reasons why I was getting nervous about the financial system. So and really none of that's changed. We've gone through the GFC, which was essentially a debt-borne credit cycle crisis. And what they've done is just thrown a whole lot more debt and stimulus at it. And I often talk about, that the GFC was triggered by about $1.5 trillion of subprime debt. But we've added about 104 trillion since there, 75% up to the mid 200s. So that all this market that we're seeing now is central bank inflated and not fundamentals. So I then go and look at the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are things like gold and silver and other hard assets. So
yep, makes sense. I mean, look, that's what I don't understand is, I've sort of exited a lot of my equity positions about 18 months ago because I'm not care to catch the bottom or the top. I want the chunk in the middle. That's my whole being as a trader and investor, right? Take the safer money if there is such a thing. Now, through gold, I mean, gold's had a pretty decent little run earlier, well, throughout 2019. I mean, it's had a pretty damn good run. Speaking to a market that's 1.4 trillion or no, 11 trillion or 14 trillion. What's the gold market cap now? It's hard to tell, I know. But
well, it's an interesting story because if you look at all the gold that's ever been mined, so 190,000 tonne or whatever, it's around that $7-8 trillion. But if you look at what's actually, I guess, available to trade in an investable form, they estimate about $1.5 trillion. So, and that's the allure, right? So if you've got 300 trillion in financial markets and 200 trillion in private property, when all that panics and tries to get into that little $1.5 trillion space, in that supply demand price equation, there's only one variable there. So it's so that's the allure, I guess, in that safe haven run to safe.
It feels very similar to that of what people hope will happen with Bitcoin, I suppose. And I mean, in a financial sense, if you consider how small Bitcoin in the crypto asset space is, it's, I mean, it is very, very similar to that of what Bitcoin is to gold is what gold is to other financial assets. So I think, you know, gold is probably going to be the one that produces more goods out of that, simply because it's a tried and tested safe haven, if you will. And you know, there's a lot of people arguing towards that. A lot more people have have opportunities to trade with that, which brings me through now to what you're doing with the tokenization, because what you're actually doing there is using blockchain to essentially use a blockchain to put gold and silver on it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I guess, look, the backstory is in 2017, we actually added the top 5 cryptos to our offer. So over the counter, we're pretty well the first in Australia, or the only ones doing it. Person to person, high value, walk away with a secure wallet. So the natural progression of merging those two worlds was that, you know, the 5,000-year-old monetary asset with this new fandangled blockchain thing. But it works so beautifully, seamlessly, because, you know, it just addresses some of the clunkiness of owning physical metal. And the other thing, when we looked around at what else was out there, you scratch the surface and you very quickly find yourself in Malta or the Caribbean, or so these sort of reg light jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So the opportunity was there to have something domiciled in Australia, signed off by, you know, pretty well the preeminent lawyers in this space in Australia, by a 45-year-old bullion dealer, not a startup, and tokenized gold, and have it 100% backed. And my absolute preoccupation with all of this is to, I guess, address any concern, because we hear all, you know, the stories of rehypothecation and you know, ETFs not having enough there and all this sort of thing, that you had absolute visibility and third-party assurances that every token on issue, so every token is 1 gram of gold or 1 gram of silver, that, you know, most definitely that's sitting in Reserve Vault. BDO audit that every quarter, and that audit's not just about is it there now, it's that has it not moved. So we haven't gone and played with that in between audits, so that's completely addressed, and it's fully insured by Lloyd's. So that was, you know, that was the preoccupation, is to get something that was as allocated as you can get in a tokenized form, but then give you all the benefits of the blockchain, of transferability and of security, and I guess the economics of it as well, in terms of, you know, low margins.
Now, how do we get around, like, I mean, one of the things I think that the listeners and viewers will want to know is this. I mean, obviously, I believe the way that, you know, what's it called? Your centralized banking system first operated was by the, you know, gold miners coming in and having the gold back there, and then they get these notes that suggest that they have this much gold, and some bright spike went, well, hang on, only 10% of people are taking the gold out of here. Let's inflate what it is, and that was where gold-backed currency came from, really.
Sure.
How do we know that the gold that's in Reserve Vault isn't somewhat owned by somebody else, and we're playing the same game of putting it across both the physical, that you know, I'm probably sure that I can buy a kilo of gold, have it sit in Reserve Vault safely, securely, with my certificate under my name, and then you're selling half of that block of gold, or that, you know, gold bullion bar, into the tokenized economy. How do we have the reassurance that that's not happening?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it also speaks to the obvious question of what if Ainslie goes broke? Okay, so what we've done again there is create a completely clean skin company called Gold Silver Standard Custodian. Mm-hmm. That company's only assets are the metal that it holds, and its only liabilities are the tokens on offer that have the right to that metal. Okay. So there's just no way of you know, on selling that metal to anyone else. The metal doesn't move, it stays there. Every single serial number of every single bar is recorded on the blockchain. So whenever we mint more tokens, the transaction hash is applied to that serial number. So you have absolute visibility via the website. You can interrogate the database that has a record of all of this, the blockchain, which is, you know, immutably always there and transparent, and you can always see the two meet. Whatever happens with Ainslie doesn't really matter, because that is held completely separately.
Okay, well that's good to know. I guess the second side of that is, you know, you can mint more tokens as you get more gold, right? And silver, depending on demand.
Yep. And the opportunity there too, as opposed to other examples, is so in terms of market cap. So the market cap at the moment's about $5.5 million of the tokens. But so if you wanted to buy $6 million worth, then or any high, you would normally move the market. What we can facilitate easily through Ainslie Wealth is that you say, I want $5 million worth. We actually go and buy $5 million in metal. We mint that $5 million in metal and we issue you the tokens. We haven't moved the market at all. You've done it all at the same spot price. And therefore, so you just have effectively infinite depth of buying without, moving the market or paying extra.
And where do I store this? Is there a specialized wallet? Is it built on the Ethereum network? Is it on my trees? Where do I put it?
Yeah, so it's an ERC20 token. So it's any wallet that's compliant with ERC20, which is most. So I guess the other thing that we introduced when Ainslie Wealth was doing the OTC is that we will supply anyone who comes into store, because we need you to watch us do it for obvious reasons, is we produce a cold wallet in front of you. So that's essentially a paper wallet. Nicely packaged, but it's something that's produced completely offline on machines that have never been online and never will be. And you walk out, and it also helps with, I guess, newcomers to crypto, is that, where is this thing and what do I get? When you're walking out with a wallet that is unhackable because there's just no connection to the internet ever, then that's one means of doing it. But we've got storage accounts where we have cold storage in Reserve Vault that we store it for you, or you might have your own Ledger, Trezor, Uconnect, whatever it might be.
What if I lose my Trezor? What if I lose it? Is there somewhere where it's stored where there's a claimable, I've got 50 grams of gold, I've lost my Trezor. Is there any link back at all, or is that the responsibility of the holder?
Absolutely. So just like any other cryptocurrency, you lose that private key and it's gone. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's for as much safety for the client, really, more than anyone
else.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So has anybody actually settled? I mean, we know the market cap $5.5 million right now. Has anyone actually gone ahead and settled in the physical? Because I think it's 50 kilo of gold up to 50 kilo, and 1 kilo of gold and 50 kilo of silver. Has anyone settled?
No, they haven't. So it's look, and the beauty of that redeemability means that that introduces real arbitrage. Okay, so if this thing becomes its own organic thing in the market, then the mere fact that you can redeem, as you say, just come in with no cost at all, give us 1,000 AUS and we'll give you 1 kilo of gold. That straight away introduces the arbitrage into, and that's what we wanted to, in terms of a stable coin, in terms of something that really tracks the price of gold or silver. But to date, no one's actually redeemed. But mind you, the price is not doing things that would ordinarily have people doing that anyway.
No, well, I mean, we've seen gold sort of level out for the last few weeks, haven't we? I mean, it's struggling at 1,500 at the minute. What's your thoughts for the rest of for 2020 on the asset class itself? I know it's difficult to really have an understanding. I guess it depends a lot on what happens across financial markets, but certainly a good start to the fantastic 2019 for gold at least.
Yeah, and so we saw gold get up about 20% or something this year at one stage. So it's come back a bit. It's up still about 17% for the year. Silver, does what silver does. It lagged and then it overshot and then it's come back further. So that gold-silver ratio is still very closely watched by a lot of people and still an exciting prospect. But look, in terms of where to from here, look, and we're very much about balance. So we don't try and predict because, with all due respect, no one knows.
Correct.
But it's really about, and our trademark is balance your wealth in an unbalanced world, and that world's pretty bloody unbalanced at the moment. With a lot of it's very strung out with all the stimulus and the debt burden, the geopolitical tensions and that sort of thing. So I just think we have a very strung out world that at any point one of the pieces in that very interconnected and very intricate model is going to break, and we won't get warning. So the old saying, better a year too early than a day too late, I think is sort of the rule of thumb for owning gold and silver. It's the insurance when this does and will go wrong. We just don't know when.
Yeah, it's been very interesting watching, hasn't it? I mean, we saw HSBC cut 11,000 jobs, or announced they were going to cut 11,000 jobs. I thought maybe that might be the straw. Yep. I mean, they'd say one thing, but they got a lot more information than us. That politically, driven, and so not politically driven, market driven forces from a bank like that can be significant. So if they were to say we're cutting 11,000 jobs because we think that there's a big storm on the horizon, that wouldn't do their share price any good at all. It would not do global markets any good at all. But the fact is they're looking to cut that. Deutsche Bank's in a lot of trouble. They potentially could disappear, which would be it would be bigger than Lehman Brothers, I would suggest, if that was to actually occur. We've got lots of little banks around the world that are, if they were to go through a stress test right now, I think they would be under an awful lot of pressure. So it's a melting pot right now. It's bubbling away. And, we saw that at the start of the year through gold, having that, as you say, that at one stage, 20% run to the upside, silver overshooting as the little brother often does. And a bit more steadiness of late. When we look at the tokenized side of gold, are you seeing a different type of market participant? I mean, one of the things that I think tokenizing gold and any other asset class that may not be as easily accessible to your mums and dads, other than buying a gold mining stock or an ETF, is it allows new participants to come into the space. Are you seeing that the volumes of these possibly more retail side clients are, the individual deal size being lower, or is it a big mix?
Well, we see it's lovely to watch, and that because it facilitates both. So we're listed on CoinSpot. So in the first sort of couple of months on CoinSpot, we did 5,000 trades worth about $2.2 million. So if you look at the average of that, that's only $400, and that's the average, okay? And when I look at the transaction list that anyone can look at, you can see that there's some micro trades. You can theoretically just buy 0.7 cent of gold. So it goes to 4 decimal places, and 1 token is 1 gram. So we are seeing, we've got, but what importantly is they're buying it at the sorts of spreads that are usually only for the people that are buying sort of, 10 ounces a kilo of gold or 100 ounces of silver. So they're getting little amounts at the big guys spread. And then on the flip side, we're seeing some large money coming in, particularly in silver, because of the storage aspects of high value of silver. They can buy the silver tokens and literally weighs nothing, and storage is free. So we're seeing both ends of the spectrum, but I think it definitely does introduce an easy way for the guys that are beginning their investments.
Exactly, and look, it can also be sort of seen as somewhat of a stable coin as well. I mean, let's not beat around the bush on this one. I mean, we've got the thing is that your asset class that is gold and silver, that is sitting on the blockchain, that is there verified, that is backed by Lloyd, so it is insured. It's very structured, and you've got everything you need to back it. Then you look at something like US dollar Tether, which seems to have a lawsuit coming out every second day of the week. True USD seems to be a little bit more clean and clear, but I see it as potentially another opportunity for people that if they want to move out of Bitcoin for a bit, because they might be a bit bearish on the asset class for some time, especially if they don't know how to trade it and hedge themselves, that it could be a wise move to move into a bit of gold and silver here and there, just to balance that portfolio. And gold does move up and down, don't get me wrong, not quite as much as obviously moving into some alts.
Yeah, and we've observed that on CoinSpot, so we're definitely seeing, if there's a strong run, we're seeing a spike in some, what looks to be profit taking out of, Bitcoin and into this, and vice versa. So there's been selling down of the gold when Bitcoin's looking low and a good buy. So we're observing that through CoinSpot as well. And the beauty of this is, you can trade it 24/7, which is very hard for gold and silver. And again, at those, so there are spreads just because it is physically backed by something that has real physical spreads in terms of how it all works. But that cost is the fact that you've got something essentially allocated as opposed to a CFD or other sort of non-really backed derivative out there in terms of playing that gold and silver market. So you get that sort of hard asset lack of counterparty risk play versus something that's completely synthetic.
Yeah, what's the minimum and max? Is there a maximum side of trades that you've got on your OTC for either Bitcoin, gold, or silver, or whatever you host there? No
maximum, because as I described before, we can order as long as, and to be upfront, you would probably have to wait a week or two for the metal to arrive. But the fact is, you have a contract, your price is locked in. You're just waiting for us to get the metal and mint the token. So there's essentially no upside or limit in terms of what that is.
Yep.
And likewise, there's no minimum. So if you buy OTC through Ainslie, we've got a $500 minimum just because of the human, effort in store. But over CoinSpot, you can literally buy a cent if you wanted to.
And it's pretty obvious too, isn't it? I mean, if you're going to go to CoinSpot, you look at that, you look at the order book, and you go, "Well, there's not enough there for me to buy." Pick up your phone and give you guys a call and just say, "Look, I needed this amount. It's not in the order book. I don't want to bring the price right up. What do I do here?"
Yep.
And then you guys can facilitate the minting and grabbing a hold of the you're the secondary market, really.
Yeah. And that human to human aspect is important for a lot of people as well. Just to if they're new to the space, particularly.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to understand a bit more about the project. Is there anything that I've missed that you want to sort of talk about at the moment, or?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well, mate. It's on any, we've touched on this, but on any overview of the world at the moment, it's pretty important to get some of that sort of safe asset or the uncorrelated asset into your portfolio, and that's the key thing we keep talking about. It's just having an asset in your portfolio that's not correlated to the rest effectively, and gold and silver have proven that time and time again. Bitcoin's proving it to some extent already as well, but it's really about getting that true diversification in your portfolio, and now you've got an easy way of trading in and out of gold and silver as well, 24/7.
Couldn't have been a truer word spoken, Paul. Thank you very much for your time. Where do people find out more information about yourself and the project?
Yeah, sure. So Gold and Silver Standard is literally goldsilverstandard.com, or if you want to come to Ainslie Bullion, it's ainslieBullion.com.au.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Engeman, Director of Ainslie Bullion and Reserve Vault. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Good on you, mate. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye for now.
The Trader Cobb Crypto Show, talking business in blockchain.